That's one word, just cost Prince Harry $67 million. And by the way, it's $67 million he don't have because the money is running out. This is the new reporting, interestingly, from a longtime ally of Prince Harry. Indeed, a longtime propagandist of Prince Harry, Dan Wakeford. He is reporting in his Celebrity Intelligence fresh details of this cost hearing over the massive loss in the case against the Daily Mail. And of course, not all 67 million is Harry going to have to pay out. But the point being, he don't have money to spend at the moment. The inheritance is running up. The bills are stacking up. There is no big money payment coming in from Spotify or Netflix. Things are tight. The pressure is on. They want to maintain the lifestyle, as we saw this week from Meghan Markle's drop of her holiday pictures, which show that absolutely she still intends to travel by private jet. Absolutely, she still intends to live a lavish lifestyle that I would argue these two can't afford. And as I have been reporting for some time, that is also behind Harry's deranged battle to secure permanent government-funded armed protection paid for by British taxpayers because he wants to cut off that $3 million security bill. So we're going to get into all of this today with Paula Froelich, who is the host of Paula Froelich Uncensored. But Paula, first, I just want to read you out this reporting from Dan Wakeford in his Celebrity Intelligence. It's interesting, of course, because for such a long time, as you know, he was very much Team Harry and Meghan. But now he writes, 2 weeks from now, Mr. Justice Nicklin sits down again, this time to decide who pays for the most expensive privacy trial in British legal history. And the man he's deciding it for is the same one who just called his verdict a whitewash. Prince Harry and 6 fellow claimants, including Elton John and Liz Hurley, lost every one of the 97 allegations they brought against associated newspapers, with Nicklin ruling that suspicion, even where understandable, was not enough, and that the claimant's key witness had his credibility comprehensively undermined after disowning his own testimony mid-trial. Harry and Baroness Doreen Lawrence responded within hours, calling the ruling a complete and obvious whitewash. Associated now wants roughly £50 million back, with that costs hearing set for July 29 and 30th, so that is next week, in front of Nicklin himself. Costs hearings let judges weigh how the losing side behaved, not just whether they lost, and branding the ruling a whitewash before that hearing is exactly what litigators coach clients against. Doubly so when the language reads as an attack on the judiciary itself, rather than just an adverse result. English costs rules explicitly bake conduct into the calculation. Under Civil Procedure Rule 44.2, judges can move a losing party onto indemnity costs, a tougher standard, where the burden flips onto the loser to prove the bill was unreasonable if their conduct falls out of the norm. There's precedent for exactly this kind of attack costing real money. In one case, a litigant who made baseless claims that a court officer had acted dishonestly was hit with an indemnity cost order worth roughly £80,000. Worth noting, that case involved conduct inside the litigation itself, not a statement issued after judgment. So whether Harry's post-verdict comment factors into Nicklin's decision on July 29 is untested rather than certain. But the palace's alarm points at something separate from the cost maths, a constitutional discomfort within a senior royal, even one step back from official duties, being seen to attack the judicial system that operates in his own father's name. It fits a pattern with Harry regardless, where the instinct to respond in the moment tends to beat the discipline of staying quiet. He called a previous defeat a good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, and both times the emotional reaction landed before anyone could calculate whether it was the smart one. Insurance and outside funders, including backing tied to Hacked Off and the late Max Mosley's estate, may absorb much of the bill. So this likely isn't a personal check from Harry's own account. Still, if July 29th goes badly and if the palace's private unease becomes public commentary, whitewash will look less righteous defiance and more like Harry letting feeling override strategy again. So Paula Froelich, what do you make of that analysis? And do you really believe that there are just the funds sitting there? Because if there really were, why would Prince Harry, according to your reporting, have asked for more money from Elton John, who reminded him, well, no, I'm actually not your ATM?
No, yeah, he did. And here's the deal. I, how do I put this? Dan is kind of stating the obvious. There is actually more than one word. It was the entire statement about how they came to court. They were seeking justice and accountability. They received neither. Now, the other issue is this was not an off the cuff, angry statement. They knew about the verdict beforehand. And also, frankly, I don't think Harry's smart enough to come up with an off the cuff statement. So this statement was prepared at least a day in advance. And what was interesting about it, it was only Baroness Lawrence and Harry on it. Elton John, who knows quite well how the courts work, didn't sign it and has
So
kept
significant,
quiet.
Paula.
And so they are also very at odds because, of course, who has the bulk of the cash? Elton, not Harry. The other issue is that the Daily Mail is going after 50 million pounds. Now, a lot of people are saying insurance is going to cover this. However, the insurance company is likely, if they haven't already, alerted the team they're not going to pay or they're going to fight having to pay because, first of all, the case should never have been brought, as Justice Nicklin warned, and then in his judgment said there was absolutely no evidence. Second of all, the way that Harry acted in court and frankly lied in court. And I think the insurers will say, no, we don't have to pay. This was all in bad faith. So they could be on the hook for even more. I'm not sure where Dan got the 67 million pounds because right now Harry's side is saying everything is capped at 4 million per side. The Daily Mail are saying they actually spent 50. Now we know Harry's team did not charge because they were just hoping for a percentage if they won. However, at the end of the day, it'll be 50 million if they uncap everything. Do I think it's going to be 50 million? No. Will they get more than 4? Likely. But the whole point is Wednesday, grab your popcorn because the days of our Montecito lives, summer edition, is about to hit a crescendo.
And I am there for it, Paula, because he deserves this because of the total arrogance, which I think has led him to believe that he doesn't have to follow normal rules, which is why, as you point out, he released that statement along with Doreen Lawrence rather than Elton John. Now, interestingly, Doreen Lawrence doesn't have any financials on this because Harry has assured her, oh, don't worry, we're all going to pay for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So the two people who released the statement, Paula, are the two people I would argue who don't live in the real world because everyone else is worried about, well, is this going to result in me being bankrupt? Sure, they have relied on very nefarious people, proven criminals who say, oh, don't worry, we've got all of this money from the dead Max Mosley. That's going to cover all of this. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the point is, it's a very different time in Harry's lives when he had all of this money to fritter away. I think one of the biggest stresses in the marriage within Harry and Meghan at the moment is the financial pressure, Paula.
Absolutely. Now, there are 2 points I want to make. Number one, Harry and Elton assured everyone, Liz Hurley, Sadie Frost, Baroness Lawrence, et al., they would cover costs. You can tell this because Elizabeth Hurley is having the time of her life this summer in the south of France with her boyfriend, Billy Ray Cyrus. They just released photos of them laughing, giggling on the beach, looking like two old lesbians from Minnesota. God bless them. But the other point is Meghan was always worried about this case because she always thought, what if we lose? And it was looking at the end of last year that they might lose. And in fact, Harry's team tried to settle at Christmas at the very, right on the day of Christmas. And the Daily Mail said, no, 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 you brought it this far. We're not settling. In fact, we want to go to court because we want to have our say. There will be no gag order. Goodbye. So Meghan was always aware of the chunk that this could take out of their finances. Now they're already running at a loss. It costs them millions of dollars a year just to stay in the house in Montecito, keep the lights on, and hire security, not to mention the private schooling, etc. So they're not covering even those bills. They have the money in the bank for that, but nothing is being replenished. It's all being sucked out. This will take out an even larger chunk.
The other stress for Harry over the past week, Paula, we believe, is his growing heartbreak over the fact that, surprise, surprise, he has no relationship with the future king. I'm not talking about Prince William, although that's obviously true too, but rather his son, Prince George, who is 13, and Harry very much wanted to have a role in raising. Now, this was discussed on the Daily Tea podcast this week. And I thought they made an interesting point, actually. This is Camilla Tominay, and I think it's Victoria Ward. I think it's Victoria Ward, who's the deputy royal editor. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they make the point that actually George and Charlotte, and probably Louis too eventually, will never want to have their own personal relationship with Harry because they're going to be so horrified when they receive access to the things that Harry said and did about their own parents. And I thought it was very interesting analysis. Paula, watch this.
At any point, George can download
just go and buy
the
it.
audio book and listen to his uncle slagging off his dad.
When he's in his own room at Eton, maybe that's what he'll do. Out of sight, he'll be reading spare.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't.
Meanwhile, Princess Charlotte, when she's got a Netflix account, can watch the whole of The Crown.
Yeah.
Then, if she wants to, she can watch
Harry and Meghan
With
on
Love,
Netflix,
Meghan.
and she can watch she can learn how to make flower sprinkles and all that.
She can make jam. She can put a wine bottle in a Japanese scarf and give it to a friend.
Now, look, I know they're making light at the end, Paula, but it is actually a more serious point, isn't it? Which is that Harry never thought through the consequences of any of his actions, because actually it wasn't just William and Catherine and Camilla who he was probably ending a relationship with permanently. It was also his niece and his two nephews, who, at least for the moment, I mean, you never know, but it's highly unlikely, I think, that there's going to be a split in this family. I mean, they're super tight, super tight, and they've been so well raised. And of course, they're going to be really upset. And we'll also know, by the way, behind the scenes, the strain that the release of Harry's book and all of the publicity circus around it caused William and Catherine.
Well, they've also lived it. Let's be clear. George is 13. He was 3 when Harry and Meghan got married. The next 2 years, from 3 to 5, children are very aware of tension in the household. Can't imagine he doesn't remember that. And since then, they've had no contact. So why would they ever have a relationship? Now, of course, Harry didn't think things through. No one's ever accused him of being the sharpest knife in the drawer. But I think the reason why he would want a relationship with George is not so much for the uncle, but as being an uncle, but for his own children. He understands that his children should be able to understand what royalty is. And TikTok, once William is king, no one's going to be royal in Montecito anymore. So I think he didn't think things through just because he was in a fugue, as he almost always is. And also because he hadn't really thought about his own children. He didn't have his own children, really. He only had Archie at the time, and he was so little. And of course, Harry didn't realize that William was so mad, he probably would likely never speak to him again. And he didn't realize the rift that telling his truth, and let's use that word in quotes, would cause.
His truth, exactly. His truth. Paula, of course, George did, as you alluded to, turn 13 this week. And there's a first public debate going on about whether we should see more from George. This from the Daily Mail's Palace Confidential that posed this question: should Prince George attend more public engagements now he's a teenager? The results were quite interesting. 5% of people saying he needs to prepare for his future role. Yes. 57% saying no, let him grow up in peace. And 38% saying yes, but only if his parents think it's right. The Royal News Network responding to that poll by writing, this is an interesting question because other families do get their children out a bit more for public engagements. I would argue especially Princess Estelle of Sweden, who is only a year older and already attending state functions. Also, on her 13th birthday, Princess Leonor gave a speech in Madrid to commemorate the 40th year of Spain's constitution. But on the flip side, there's so much more international pressure on the Brits that I can understand why George would be offered a bit more time before any big, serious public engagements. Paula, I mean, I think I'm in the latter camp, which is that I would like to see a little bit more of George, but only if William and Catherine agree with it, because, of course, we don't know the trials and tribulations that this young guy might be going through. I mean, he seems very well-rounded and very, very much ready for the role. But you know what I'm saying? This is something that has to be determined, I think, by the parents rather than by, in this case, armchair commentators like us, Paula. Not often I say
Yeah,
that.
I agree. But also, let's remember, Dan, he's 13. He's going through puberty. 13-year-olds, I don't care how well put together you are, how well behaved you seem, your life is a mess. You're 13 and he's starting a new school. Let him be. I mean, the only thing that's important for me that he should learn is at the foot of his grandfather and at the foot of his father to do the actual role that he will have to assume one day. Same as William did.
And then we get some little insight into George, the real Prince George. There's been a few of these mainstream media features over the course of the week. I discussed some of them earlier in the week because it is interesting. These are coming from the Royal Rota. And so what people need to understand is this is not really digging up any dirt or anything like this. This is just for context. This is the official narrative. These are the small little facts about George's life that the palace are prepared to put into the public domain to give us just a little understanding of our future king. So this one's written by Rebecca English. She is, of course, the royal editor of the Daily Mail and also the head of the Royal Rota. And she writes, George is said to hugely look up to his mother. Oh, isn't that lovely? He's a mummy's boy like me, who is described to me as the heart and soul of the family. They share the same sportiness and quietly competitive nature. George, I am told, is a talented triathlete and pretty handy with a tennis racket too, and has inherited both her love of the outdoors and artistic talent. He is also, I am told, obsessed by flying, something of a family trait. Can I just say, no, we need a future king who never wants to get in a bloody plane or a helicopter, okay? Like, this is just one thing I didn't want him to pick up on from his father. Anyway, she goes on, the couple's biggest worry now is not the paparazzi, but an entire generation. This is something we've heard a lot this week, Paula. An entire generation armed with camera phones, instantly uploading snaps and videos for clout and likes. It will be interesting to see how they navigate this challenge, given how determined they have always been to ring-fence their family from the moment George and his siblings were born. One source tells me of an incident in the early summer of 2015 that was something of a tipping point for Kate in particular. She was out on the beach in Norfolk with George, who was just 2, when it became clear they were being stalked by 2 photographers. She had to grab him and go and was deeply upset about the whole thing. It wasn't the first time this had happened, but she was really unhappy and very, very worried. There was a lot of thinking along the lines of, what is this role that William and I in public life are going to do for him? She was desperate for a sense of normalcy for her family. From that moment on, she and the prince worked hard to protect their family life. Another source adds that they have always put their family first, even if it risks public criticism in terms of public duties and visibility, and George's growing confidence in public is happily the end result. William and Catherine have ripped up the royal rulebook and rewritten it themselves, they say. It's prompted debate at times, I know, but I would argue when you see those children who are such a credit to their parents, then you can't disagree with their approach. And actually, Paula, I am totally on board with that. I'm totally on board with every aspect of that. They have got it right. And what you just have to hope, I guess, is that that means that George is going to be able to cope with what happens, because there is going to be a tough balancing act here. What happens if he is in a nightclub and some teenager not really wanting to cause an issue posts a video or something on social media? It's not the fact that the mainstream media are going to run the video, they won't, but it's the fact that it could go viral on social media anyway. So I guess it's quite good they're alert to it, because what you hope, I guess, is that it will mean that George himself is alert to it. But it is a tough thing for a teenager to have to deal with. Of course it is.
Oh, Absolutely. I think it's really just going to be the nightclub is going to be in the palace basement instead of
Yeah.
in Fulham or Chelsea. I do think that they have done a very good job doing what they can to give a firm, strong background and family tight knit. They definitely look towards the Middletons as their role models, as opposed to Charles and the other royal family. And they don't want what happened to Harry to happen to Charlotte or Louis or even George. They don't want a spoiled kid. They want a happy kid. And they want a kid who understands his role, understands his family, and he's been born into it. So at this point, it's all he knows. And unlike you, I'm not mad at him flying a helicopter or a plane.
Oh
I
God,
say
I
go for
am.
it.
I am. I'm just like,
I
no.
listen, as long as he gets his full pilot's license and doesn't have to have a co-pilot wherever he goes, that's great. I think it gives
No.
him a job. It gives him something to work for, to earn, which is what people like this need.
It's just so dangerous,
People,
Paula. I don't look.
life is dangerous,
have other
Dan.
hobbies. I know. It's just like have other hobbies apart from flying a bloody plane or helicopter. Do you know what? It's the one area where I totally thought the late Queen was so good, but even she could never get William to change his mind. It's like, what on earth are you doing flying yourself, the heir to the throne, and then the next two heirs? What on earth are you doing flying them in a helicopter? Do you really want to leave us with King Harry? That's I know that's not how the late Queen would have put it, but that was very much the sort of undertone. So it's not, I'm not being po-faced, right? It's just that when you're thinking about the succession, Paula, it's like, just don't fly on a plane together. But William was his own man and he wanted things to be like a normal family. So he ignored those rules.
Well, also he was in the army, and he served. So these are the type of roles that they have. And also, to be fair, the rates of accidents of planes and helicopters are far less than, say, cars or even walking across the street being hit by a bus. So I am
True.
all for
You just
it.
hear those
And it's
horror
not,
stories, don't you, all the time? But
oh,
yeah.
and it's also not like they're going to give him a plane or a helicopter that has a malfunction. Everything will be checked over 900 times.
I know, but I'm sure they said the same thing about JFK Jr. Do you know what I mean? It's just
Oh, no.
the fear.
That was totally different. No. That fool?
Okay.
First of all, he never should have been flying that plane ever. He was not qualified to fly that plane at night, and he was not careful. So there is absolutely no comparison between that. JFK Jr. was reckless.
Good. Because William isn't reckless. I'm not saying that. It's just like you just sort of think about helicopters and anyway. Speaking of flying, did you see this bonkers thing this week from the boss of Prince Harry's company, Travelist, who has previously compared flying to drink driving? And I just wondered if he had a conversation before Prince Harry and Meghan Markle got on that private jet, this week, Paula. So here's the reporting from the Daily Mail's Richard Eden. When Prince Harry launched eco-firm Travelist in 2019 to make tourism more environmentally friendly, he and his wife Meghan were called hypocrites because of their frequent use of private jets. That year, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex reportedly made 4 such trips in the span of 11 days. King Charles's younger son responded that no one is perfect and we can all do better. But would Harry's words wash with Travelist's newly appointed director, Graham Miller? I can disclose that Miller has expressed contempt for frequent flyers, not even just private jets, by the way, just normal people who get in normal planes, and has even compared them to criminals who drive under the influence. He said there was a time when mentioning on a Monday that you'd just flown back from Milan or New York made you sound super sophisticated. Now it's like boasting that you drank 5 pints and drove home. He said in an interview in 2020 when he was a lecturer at the University of Surrey. So again, Paula, it's like clearly there's a madman now running the Travelist, or like an eco-green nutter. That's my view personally, because how on earth can you compare getting a short flight, like a short European flight from mainland Europe to London, or even New York in the UK, like comparing that to drink driving? I personally believe that's mad, Paula. I think that makes you a nutter. But I mean, this is the guy running Harry's company.
Yeah, but let's look at it this way, shall we? Harry's company, which is a quasi charity, which I have written about, and did a look into their bizarre, shady finances. And I say shady because when you're a quasi charity, you can hide your finances, but you still have to be public. So it's odd. But the entire company is from 2020 or 2018. It should not actually exist right now. The only it exists is because it has contracts with bigger companies like booking.com or hotels.com where they tell people how to be more eco-friendly, or you can pay money to make your trip more green. The entire thing can all be done by AI these days, so there's absolutely no need for it. Second of all, they've had staff turnover, hence this new guy. Third of all, the whole woke thing of you shouldn't travel is always, good for thee, but not for me, because of course they travel quite a bit. I'd like to see his passport. And again, Dan, you tell me how giving $100 on top of a plane ticket helps the ozone layer,
It does nothing.
helps the smog.
Does
I'm not sure,
nothing.
because at the heart of it, cash is a human construction.
It makes
that we all
champagne
agree is worth
socialists
something.
like Harry feel better about themselves. I always thought that was I never really looked into travelers because I'm just like, I don't give a damn about this company.
Oh,
It's never gonna
I
fly.
will send you, because
Oh,
it's a
please.
way to hide finances. It's a way to kind
Mm,
of whitewash your own reputation by look, I do so much. And you're like, no, you don't. That's something AI can do in 2 hot seconds if I really give a damn and say, geez, how much emissions am I doing? When frankly, he don't care. He just wants to look good. And it sounds good. So there we go.
Paula Froelich of Paula Froelich Uncensored. Thank you so much. Do make sure you subscribe to Paula Froelich Uncensored on Substack and YouTube. Thank you so much, Paula. Have an amazing weekend.